In this video, we're going to talk about the top 5 swords in The Witcher 3. Subscribe and hit the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next video. We cover The Witcher 3, The Witcher Netflix series, and fantasy TV such as Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings. Not surprisingly, the best swords in The Witcher 3 are in the Blood and Wine expansion, which is the highest level quests. Prior to Blood and Wine, probably the Witcher School swords are some of the best and are hard to beat. But the 5 swords we're going to talk about here, Aerondite, the Toussaint Knight steel sword, the Belhaven Blade, Ami, and the Hen Gaidth steel sword, will be much more powerful than the Grandmaster crafted swords late in the game during the first playthrough. Moreover, if you delay in picking them up, in most cases, they will go to a higher level, have higher stats.
The blade may be grasped solely by one who possesses the 5 chivalric virtues.
So why is Aerondite so good? Aerondite is so good because it levels up, for one thing. It also has the highest top line stats of any silver sword. So when it's leveled up to a level 100, it has over 1,000 for fast attacks and over 1,200 for strong attacks. Aerondite is picked up from the Lady of the Lake in the Blood and Wine expansion. In the quest There Can Be Only One, you have to possess the 5 chivalric virtues, and there are a number of ways to qualify for all these 5 virtues. One is compassion. You get the opportunity to spare the Shaelmar, and that'll go towards your compassion very early in the main quests of Blood and Wine when you're at the tournament grounds. You also are automatically going to get the opportunity to tip the mailboy who brings the letter about the mutations and gives you the quest, Come and Embrace the Strange with Dr. Moreau. If you tip him, that will go towards your generosity, and that's probably the cheapest generosity that will qualify. The others are valor. We're going to talk about a sword that you might want to get as a spare to Aerondite, Ami, which will satisfy the valor virtue if you kill the Shaelmar in that quest. And honor is another one. There are several quests that will satisfy honor. Wisdom is another one of the 5 chivalric virtues. And you probably will satisfy all these by the time you get done with the main quests in Blood and Wine, but if you want to pick it up a little earlier, say you hit 100 before finishing the main quest as I did, then you might want to do those quests before you go to the final stretch and capture the castle, which is where you're on rails until the end of the main quests. If you're picking it up in your first playthrough, you can level it up all the way to level 100 by their leveling up system, which has you, if you get 10 straight hits without taking damage, then the 11th hit will give you 2 points to the top and bottom line numbers, so that the stats, top line and bottom, the top line stats go up. The other thing is that every time you get a hit within a fight sequence without taking damage, that increases your damage by 10% up to doubling your damage. So a lot of the demonstrations that you'll see of people with the maximum hit power, they're going to use Aerondite, and it's going to already be fully charged, and then when it dispels its charge, it doubles the damage. It goes further than that the 11th hit after you've had it fully charged is going to be a critical hit and kill its foe. The problem is, I would recommend picking up Aerondite very late in your first playthrough, perhaps before Capture the Castle, or perhaps after you finish the main quest and you're pretty much maxed out your points, because I find Aerondite very tedious to level up. That it is a rare time where a fight with a monster will take 10 hits, and if it does take more than 10 hits, typically the monster is going to deal some damage back to Geralt. right? So, for instance, the boss fight with Detloff at the end of Blood and Wine, it's a very rare player that doesn't take any damage with that, but you might have to swing Aerondite and hit Detloff more than 10 times. But really, if you have an alchemy and attack build, most of your monster fights are going to be one hit. And so you actually have to find large groups of monsters. So, for instance, there's a place in Velen that has 4 Necker nests. Well, if you had not destroyed all those Necker nests, maybe you could kill 20 Neckers in a row and charge up the sword twice, which would give you 4 points, 4 additional hit points. You get 10 hit points every level. Unfortunately for you, if you're playing the main quest, you're going to spend half your time leveling up Aerondite and half your time playing the main quest, because you have to go on side quests, essentially harvest these Necker nests so you can level up Aerondite. And so if you're between levels 11 and 40, my recommendation is to, and even before that, because you can get the Viper swords more at a lower level than that you craft maybe several different kinds of school swords in a way that if their upgrade dates are staggered, then you can be upgrading, say, every 3 levels instead of every 6 levels. So, for instance, if you did the sword quests for the Griffin, Cat, and Bear schools, like I did on my second playthrough, then about every 4 levels I would have a new sword with increased stats, and just did that until we got to the superior levels. And then at the master levels, the upgrade levels are the same and they're not staggered, and so there's not a lot of reason to do multiple Witcher School quests. The alternative of leveling up Aerondite pretty much means either you're harvesting those Necker nests, and that's a big part of your game, or you're seeking out wolf packs or really poorly defended bandits and using Aerondite and unequipping your steel sword. And so Aerondite against beasts and men does almost no damage. It does less than 100 points of damage. And it's not very effective, regardless of what its actual stats are. And so you just are kind of pummeling them. It's almost like you're hitting them. If you were punching them, that's about how effective Aerondite is against beasts and men. And so if you're going against wolves or dogs, they don't really have a lot of attack potential, so you probably can get away with that, and that will level up. But it's the amount of wolf packs you have to attack, the amount of Neckers that you have to harvest just to level up Aerondite is probably in the thousands from picking it up at, say, level 50 to 100, right? Because you need 10 hits, actually 11 hits just to increase it by 2. That means at least 55 hits to go from one level to the next. If you got 10 levels, that's over 500. If you have 50 levels to go, that's over 2,500 hits without taking damage, right? And every time you take damage, the charging of the sword goes down, and you've fallen back. So, if anything, I believe the reputation of Aerondite is overrated, and so I would recommend with your first playthrough and your second playthrough to pick it up. You get to pick it up twice from the Lady of the Lake. Pick it up late in your playthrough so that you don't have to do a lot of leveling up. When I picked it up at level 100, it was level 98, and I had to level it up 30 points, right? So that was like 165 hits without taking damage I needed to take to just get it up to the full Aerondite level, because I picked it up at level 100, and it seems like they're knocking back the level 2 levels when you pick it up. Another problem with Aerondite relative to other swords that I'm going to mention here is that it has no slots for runes. So if you're going to enchant it with the rune right, say using Severance so you can extend your whirl and rend distance, something I highly recommend to do on either your silver sword or your steel sword, then you're going to need to pay the rune right for 3 rune slots. And those rune slots are going to cost you 16,000. So it's not cheap to enchant it. Whereas the other swords I'm going to mention are all going to have 3 rune slots to begin with, and that's an expense you don't have to worry about creating new rune slots. The number 2 must-have best sword in the Witcher 3 Wild Hunt is the Toussaint Knight Steel Sword. Now, I've gone into why silver swords like Aerondite are not at all good with beasts and humans. So you can't just stop with a silver sword like Aerondite and say you've got the best. You need both. And the Toussaint Knight Steel Sword is by far the best I have seen in the Witcher Wild Hunt. Now, in the first playthrough, it's a level 48 sword. But if you do NG Plus at level 52 or above, I think you can have it as a level 100 sword. It is not upgradable, but it's likely, unless you enter NG Plus at a really high level, say higher than 54, that you will still be playing with it at the start of NG Plus. That's because the crafted version has plus 300 armor piercing and plus 100% critical hit damage bonus, which is really hard to beat. It has a 20% critical hit chance and a 15% chance to cause burning. So watch out swinging it by exploding barrels. Does 385 to 471 damage at the level 48 on your first playthrough. Your second, it can do 742 to 908 damage. I think its level scales to when you pick it up, so you should wait until level 100. You pick it up at the Arthok Palace Ruins at the very northern point of Toussaint. This is a Hansa base, and people actually like to not kill the leaders of the Hansa bases so they can farm them for swords and thus pay for the Grandmaster gear and Corvo Bianco upgrades, and also the Runewright enchantments, which all cost a lot of coin by going to these bandit camps that regenerate or respawn the bandits if you don't kill the leader. Unfortunately, to pick up the Toussaint Knight Steel Sword, it's guarded by the leader of that camp, and you'll essentially, as soon as you kill him and go down the stairs, it'll be an abandoned site that's no longer abandoned, and it'll be no more bandits there, no more Hans to kill. So I recommend when you do go there, you might try to steal it from the chests by his bed before killing him, without killing him. But I wasn't able to do that. I ended up killing him, and I regretted that I had not killed all the bandits on the lower level and looted them prior to going up there, because as soon as you kill him and then go down the stairs, all the bandits will disappear. Because this is a crafting diagram, not a sword, of course you have to pay to craft it, but the good part about that is you can craft as many as you want. So in terms of spare steel swords, once you have this, you probably don't need any spares, but since it's level 48 at the first playthrough, you might want to get a sword that levels up with you. That is, when you pick it up, it will be closer to your level than the Toussaint Knight Steel Sword, and we'll talk about those a little later. The third best sword in The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt is the crafted sword Gesheft. The crafted version of Gesheft can be found just north of the Bance farm. For fast attacks, it does 1,003 damage, and for strong attacks it does 1,225 damage, just short of the Aerondite top level damage. Because this is a crafting diagram, if you pick it up at a level 100, then you can make as many as you want. For short fights, it will be better than Aerondite, because it has a plus 100% critical hit damage bonus, a 15% critical hit chance, a 15% chance to poison, and plus 5% bonus experience from monsters, and plus 30% Ard sign intensity. I have read it's level 52 in the main game, but I've not verified it, so it may increase with your level. But clearly, if you pick it up at a level 100, you'll have a level 100 crafting diagram, and those are the stats that I gave you. There is another Gesheft, which is not crafted, but which is picked up in the Land of 1,000 Fables. It is not as good, and it will match your level, or when I picked it up, it matched it 2 levels below. So I picked it up at level 100, and it was level 98. It's just not as good. I'm not going to give you the stats for it, but it is worth getting. It is a Will-O-Wisp sword, and there are 2 Will-O-Wisp swords, Gesheft and Vitus, non-crafted. You pick them up, and you follow the Will-O-Wisp. One is by the lake between the Longlocks Tower and the Boy Who Cried Wolf in the Land of 1,000 Fables, and the other one is at the drawbridge to the entrance to the Cloud Giant's castle. So after you defeat the Cloud Giant, you want to follow the Will-O-Wisp. But this sword is actually easier to get than the previous 2 I mentioned. It's easier to get than Aerondite, and it's easier to get than the Toussaint Knight steel sword crafting diagram. You do have to kill a lot of wolves to get to it, and it is guarded by a she-werewolf. She-werewolf is the mate of the male werewolf who is inhabiting the band's farm, which they were evicted from, and that's why she lives in the cave, but he's just rampaging the farm. You only need to fight the she-wolf in the cave to pick up the sword, Gesheft, and of course the wolf pack that surrounds it. The cave is right by the water, but it's on the land. The 4th best sword is Ami. It's a silver sword, and it has excellent stats. It's actually better if you're close to its initial level than Aerondite for short fights. Because you're only likely to have one Aerondite worth using. That is, you haven't picked up the second one, and you probably did not level up the first one you picked up because it took too much time. You'll need a spare silver sword, and Ami is the one that you want late in your first and second playthrough. Ami at level 98, when I pick it up at 100, has plus 300 armor piercing, plus 30% Quen sign intensity, plus 75% critical hit damage bonus, plus 15% critical hit chance, and plus 15% chance to stagger. In other words, it's a really great sword with 982 to 1200 damage. Also, there's at least one other Ami in Blood and Wine, which you can pick up from the cart of the bandits with whom you're going to trade wine in Wine is Sacred, the main quest. But you pick up the 3-slotted version of Ami with the Toufo monster contract, which looks like tofu, but you switch the vowels. So the Toufo monster contract is where you go to a winery and there's a snooty vineyard owner and you find a Shaelmar. And when you kill the Shaelmar, which counts for one of the valor virtues for Aerondite, you will find in the carcass of the Shaelmar this 3-slotted version of Ami. Wine is Sacred version that you find on the bandit's cart is only a 2-slotted version, but you might want to have both to have 3 silver swords, including Aerondite, if you pick it up at level 100 or a relatively high level. But because Wine is Sacred is not, it's towards the end of the main quest, but it's not one of the last main quests, you're probably going to be a relatively lower level. So you might want to use that 2-slotted version of Ami as your silver sword before you pick up Aerondite, and the 3-slotted version of Ami after doing the Toufo monster contract. I think words to live by for The Witcher 3 is whenever you're given a dialogue option as to whether you want to travel with your companions right away or you want to meet them somewhere, you always want to meet them somewhere, and you will not get the opportunity to loot the bandits or loot the 2-slotted version of Ami if you travel with the ducal guards. Only if you tell them at the end of Wine is Sacred that you will meet them there do you get that opportunity to loot the cart with Ami on it. I would leave the Toufo monster contract to the very end right before you start NG+, the highest level of Ami possible when you start your new game. course, you'll want to enchant it before you start New Game Plus with something like Severance. Since you cannot access the Rune Rite until you do his quests in New Game Plus, but you can keep all your gear, which is in your inventory or your stash, and that means you can keep your previously enchanted swords, even if you don't have access to the Rune Rite. The fifth best sword in the Witcher 3 Wild Hunt is a steel sword called the Belhaven Blade. Like the Toussaint Knight steel sword, this is a crafting diagram, and it's relatively easy to get, although you probably would miss it if you were not looking for it. It is part of a treasure hunt called Waiting for Go and Do, play on the play Waiting for Godot. And you have to fight some bandits and then loot the bandit site. And then once you loot the bandit site, you need to go swimming in the river. Now, the chest is a little bit hard to see with your Witcher senses, so you need to swim around there for a while. And I believe there are 3 or 4 drowners that you need to one-shot kill with your crossbow. The chest will glow red, but you won't be able to see it from all angles, so keep on swimming around the boats in the water. Not actually in the boats, it's beside the boats. Okay, at level 100, it's got 760 to 928 damage for the Belhaven Blade Steel Sword, plus 30% Ard Sign Intensity, plus 100% critical hit damage bonus, plus 15% critical hit chance, plus 15% chance to poison, plus 5% bonus experience from humans and non-humans. It's a pretty awesome blade. It's only slightly worse than the Toussaint Knight Steel Sword crafted. So, given you've got a lot of options here, that it's possible you might want to pick this up earlier than the Toussaint Knight Steel Sword, or you might want to pick it up later. It's, obviously you're going to maximize its stats the later you pick it up, but you might want to have an intermediate blade between your master crafted Witcher gear, Grandmaster crafted Witcher gear, which is level 40 gear, or 40 levels from whenever you start New Game Plus. And so that is conceivable that you kind of have several levels where you need to upgrade your gear. And so these swords, which are going to level to when you pick them up, or the sword diagrams in this case, might be able to fill that gap. Since this and the Toussaint Knight Steel Sword are crafted swords, you can craft as many as you want as long as you have the coin. I'm going to give you an Easter egg, the 6th best sword, which is a steel sword in the Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. But I'm going to discuss a few things that are a little bit spoilery, so you might want to ignore this section and stop the video now. The 6th best sword is the Hen Gaidth sword in the Unseen Elder's Cave. If you pick it up at level 100, it'll be level 98. Stats are not as good as either the Toussaint Knight Steel Sword crafted or the Belhaven Blade crafted. But since it's not a crafting diagram and it will closely match your level when you pick it up, it may be useful. Its stats at level 98, when I picked it up at 100, is 742 to 908 damage, plus 150 armor piercing, plus 75% critical hit damage bonus, plus 15% critical hit chance, plus 15% chance to cause bleeding, and plus 15% chance to stun. You need a key to get in the Unseen Elder's Cave, and the only way you can get a key is to do the Blood Simple quest during the Night of the Long Fangs. So instead of going down Sienna's path to the Land of 1,000 Fables immediately, you need to do Blood Simple, and then you'll meet with Oriana, find out that she's a Bruxa, and kill the lower vampire that she wants you to kill. Then she'll give you the key, and you won't get the chance to kill her when you see the terrible thing she's doing to the orphans, but you will have the key to the Unseen Elder's Cave. Now, you don't have to go to the Unseen Elder. You have until the cutscene with Regis on the boat, or right before the boats, you can decide to go back to Sienna. And spoiler alert, going down the Unseen Elder path is not the best path to go down if you want a happy ending or the best ending with the most money and XP. So I recommend doing Blood Simple, getting the key, but then not visiting the Unseen Elder's Cave. until well after. You might want to pick this up like right before you do NG+, or you may want to pick this up because you want some sort of intermediate sword before you get the Toussaint Knight steel sword, for example. So you sail to the Unseen Elder's cave. There's a place of power there. You want to pick up the place of power and open the door. You have to do some swimming, and there's going to be a chest with some old coins in it, and then there's going to be the chest with the gloves and the steel sword diagram for the Hen Gaidth set. That's where you want to stop. You do not want to meet the Unseen Elder because that is a cutscene instant kill. So you will not have the opportunity to fight the Unseen Elder if you plunge further and try to get the whole Hen Gaidth set. Once you pick up the sword, swim back, go back to the boat, and visit the place of power if you haven't already. The Unseen Elder sleep. If you go down Sienna's path, then you can get the Will-O-Wisp swords, the lesser Gesheft and Vitus in the Land of a Thousand Fables. So you can, by doing blood simple, you get to get these 3 honorable mentions, our number 6, the Hen Gaidth Seal Sword, and the honorable mentions, Vitus and the picked up Gesheft by the Cloud Giant's castle. More Easter egg is actually a golden goose egg going down Sienna's path. The only way to get the ability point from eating the golden goose egg when you do the golden goose contract by the girl who sells flint. Notice board. Unfortunately, access to the Land of a Thousand Fables is cut off if you visit the Unseen Elder. And no golden goose ability points will you have. But you can visit the Unseen Elder's place of power without a key to the Unseen Elder's lair. Okay, thanks for listening. Subscribe and hit the bell notification icon. Let me know what your favorite swords are in The Witcher 3. What do you think are the best swords? We cover Witcher 3 video game, but also the Witcher Netflix series and other fantasy TV series on this channel.